I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. I call Liam Byrne on potential merits of a public inquiry into the Birmingham pub bombings in 1974. Liam Byrne.
Madam Deputy Speaker, 51 years ago, on the 21st of November 1974, 2 bombs exploded in the heart of Birmingham at the Mulberry Bush and the Tavern in the Town. 21 lives were lost. 220 people were injured. Families were destroyed, futures were stolen, and scars were left that have never healed. In those 2 pubs, the Provisional IRA murdered 21 souls. James Caddick, John Jones, Stanley Bodden, John Rowlands, Charles Gray, Jimmy Craig, Trevor Thrupp, Michael Beasley, Thomas Chater, Marilyn Nash, Stephen Wally, Eugene Riley, Desmond Riley, Maureen Roberts, Pamela Palmer, Anne Hayes, Maxine Hamilton, Lynn Bennett, Jane Davis, Paul Anthony Davis, Neil Tommy Marsh. All lost their lives. They were sons, daughters, parents, brothers, sisters, innocent people murdered in cold blood in Britain's deadliest acts of terrorism before 7/7, and which today is still the largest, worst, unsolved mass murder in our nation's history. And to this day, Madam Deputy Speaker, not one person, not one, has been brought to justice for this atrocity. And that is why, Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise today to call for a statutory judge-led public inquiry into the Birmingham pub bombings under Section 1 of the Inquiries Act 2005. We all know what happened that night. We know that the bombs were planted by members of the Provisional IRA. We know that a warning was phoned in. We know it came too late, that it was chaotic, that it was inadequate, that it was fatal. We know that the Birmingham six members of the Irish community in Birmingham were arrested, tortured and convicted of a crime that they did not commit. They spent 16 years in prison before the Court of Appeal quashed their convictions in 1991. We know that the relatives of the victims were left to grieve in silence and were lied to by the police and by politicians alike. And for decades they were shut out of justice, ignored, patronised, disbelieved. We know that in 2019 a jury at the resumed inquest concluded that the 21 victims were unlawfully murdered and that the IRA was responsible. And yet the jury was not allowed to consider who precisely carried out the bombing. That question of who bombed Birmingham, who murdered the 21, who committed the largest unresolved murder on these islands, the question was ruled out of scope. And so today, the truth remains buried. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a wound that has never really healed. Since 2012, the families of those who died have fought with extraordinary courage and dignity in the search for truth and in the quest for justice. They have knocked on every door, they have sat with ministers, they have won legal battles, they have crowd-funded representation, they have taken their case to Westminster, to Brussels, to Dublin, to Belfast. They have formed the group Justice for the 21, led by Julie and Brian Hampton, whose sister was killed that night. And together they have done what so many others failed to do. They had the courage and the will to keep the flame of truth alive. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
Much obliged, and I commend the honourable member for bringing this important matter to the House. He mentions Joey Hamilton. I've met with Joey many times over the years. I want to salute the courage and the tenacity of her and her fellow campaigners, and do hope that we can reach the point. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is in the House. He has made the exception for the Finucane family, created a hierarchy of victims. Surely the largest, most devastating terrorist act in our nation's history is deserving of equal treatment, and therefore a public inquiry should be given. Of course, there's one organisation that knows who carried out the bombing, who knows who the bombers are. That is the IRA themselves. But they, though they demand of others transparency, hold to themselves their wicked secrets.
Well, I'm grateful for that intervention, and I am grateful for his support for my call tonight, because he knows as well as I do that time after time after time the families found every turn they were met with barriers, with bureaucracy and with broken promises. They were told that they could not get legal aid. They were told that their case was not part of the reconciliation or the legacy of the Troubles. They were told to wait until West Midlands Police had pursued leads that led precisely nowhere. They were told again and again to be quiet, but they would not be quiet, and they will not be quiet, and this House should not sit quiet while their search for justice is unfinished. I give way.
First of all, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for Birmingham, Hodge Hill and Solihull North for bringing this forward. He's absolutely right to do this. I've met Julie Hamilton a number of times, supported her campaign when I met her personally and spoke to her in Belfast and also over here. And the 21 innocents who were murdered, there's justice needed for those ones, and I think I would like to see that happening as well. But as a Northern Ireland MP, the Troubles are never too far from my mind, and the reason that the Legacy Act never sat well with me is for the likes of the Kingsmill atrocity or this inquiry which the Honourable Gentleman is asking for, and which I have to say that I fully support. Does the Honourable Member not agree that these people have had no closure whatsoever, no justice whatsoever, and they deserve the justice, the very same justice as the Honourable Member for Northampton referred to for the Finucane family?
Liam Byrne.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for bringing that to the floor of the House, and indeed for backing the call that I make tonight, Madam Deputy Speaker, because this campaign is not about vengeance. This campaign is about one thing alone. It is about the truth and justice. It is about the right to truth, the right to accountability, the right to know that our system of law and order, our democracy, works for all and not just for the powerful. And so we have to ask in this House, why, after all of this time, after 51 years, why has there not been a public inquiry? So let us now be clear. I will give way in a moment. This cannot be a desktop review. This cannot merely be an independent panel. It must be a judge-led statutory public inquiry with the full power to summon evidence, to compel witnesses, to hold institutions to account. Why? Because this family, these grieving families, have been failed time and time and time again. And after 51 years, it's enough. I give way to the Honourable Member for Northfield.
I thank my honourable friend for bringing this debate to the House and for the powerful and creditable case that he is making tonight. Does he share the concern that after 51 years, that memories are fading, that documentary evidence, some of which may not be already secured in a department or the National Archives, is at risk of destruction, and that the chance of bringing those still living who bear responsibility for this atrocity to some measure of accountability is fading? We may not be out of time, but time is running out. Does he agree that action is needed now?
And that is why I'm grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker, for this call being given time on the floor of the House tonight. I give way to my honourable neighbour, the member for Erdington.
Paulus Hampton.
I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Member for Birmingham, Hodge Hill and South and Solihull North for securing this really important debate. Does my Right Honourable friend agree with me that for my constituents in Birmingham, Erdington, Julie and Paul, relatives of the two victims that have waited for over 50 years to get justice, enough is enough? The families are still grieving, and we must secure an independent public inquiry that includes the effective participation of the relatives as a matter of urgency so the families can get closure. Thank you.
Our honourable friend is exactly right. She speaks with such passion and eloquence about this, and she knows as well as I do that how deeply the families feel the pain. Because since the exoneration of the Birmingham Six, those men who were tortured and framed and imprisoned, since their exoneration, no one has been held to account for this failure. Since 1991, no new suspects have been brought to trial. Since 2019, even though witnesses admitted they knew who was responsible. No one has been compelled to testify, despite the fact that men like Michael Christopher Hayes, a former member of the Provisional IRA, confessed in a BBC interview in 2017 that he accepted collective responsibility for what he called a terrible, terrible tragedy. Witness O and Chris Mullin, in their evidence to the inquest, indicated that they had knowledge of those responsible for the murders. And while the coroner accepted the government legal department assurances that relevant documents have been disclosed, widespread doubts remain that the information held in the Home Office or the Foreign Office or the Ministry of Defence was in fact made available. I give way.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Member for giving way, and can I commend him on securing this important adjournment debate. More than half a century has passed, and there seems to be consecutive governments have not provided that closure, not just for the victims and their families, but also for those that were falsely convicted and their families. Does the Right Honourable Member believe that it's a lack of political will as opposed to anything else when it comes to having a public inquiry?
Is right in the thrust of his arguments, and I will come on to mention some reflections on that in just a moment, because we know that there are documents that weren't provided to the inquest. We know that key individuals involved have died, but we also know that there are allegations that at least 2 of those responsible are still alive and living free, and their names can be found in books which are in the House of Commons library. And as my honourable friend from Northfield said, as the years pass, memories fade, witnesses die, and the trail of truth will grow cold. And that is why it is time to act now. Let's look at the facts. This is the largest unresolved mass murder in British history. No statutory inquiry has ever been launched into what happened. No one from the state has ever been held accountable for the failings of the investigation, or the imprisonment of the innocent, or the denial of justice to the families. And by contrast, we in this House, at the urging of this House, we have ensured that for victims of Hillsborough, of infected blood, of Grenfell, of Windrush, the Post Office, we ensured quite rightly that we got to the bottom of what happened, what caused the pain of so many of those victims. But why not Birmingham? Why are the people of Birmingham not being given the justice that they deserve? Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it is time that we send a message from this House that there can be no more excuses. A public inquiry is not just a legal tool. It's a national act of conscience. It's how democracy apologises with honesty. It's how we tell the victims and their families that you matter. Your loss matters. Your loved ones will not be forgotten. And crucially, it's how we learn. Because if we can't learn those lessons from the past, the risk is, of course, that we repeat those. We have said often in this House that justice delayed is justice denied. It's been 51 years since that terrible night. 51 years of injustice. 51 years of doors closed and backs turned. Madam Deputy Speaker, I say that is long enough. So I want to be very clear with the House tonight about what it is that we are seeking. We are seeking the statutory public inquiry under Section 1 of the Inquiries Act 2005. We are seeking a judge-led process with full legal powers to compel witnesses and evidence, an inquiry that is independent, that is resourced to ensure effective participation of the families, an inquiry that asks openly, without constraint, without fear, without favour, who was it that bombed Birmingham? An inquiry that examines the role of the police, the criminal justice system and the state, and then and since. We have to be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this crime is not covered by the legislation and the agreements that secured peace in Northern Ireland. And that means something important. It means the Home Secretary has the power right now to order this inquiry. There is no legal obstacle. The only question is whether there is the political will. Now, in April 2024, there were 8 Birmingham MPs who wrote to the Home Secretary to demand this inquiry. November 2024, on the 50th anniversary, Justice for the 21 renewed their call, and that call was backed by a cross-party group of MPs and mayors and lawyers and campaigners. I wrote again to the Home Secretary in spring this year. I have not yet had an answer about a decision on whether an inquiry will be launched, and that is why I have asked for this debate tonight. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for equal treatment, for Birmingham to be given the justice that has been offered to the victims of so many scandals, where we have set up inquiries to get to the bottom of the truth. Of course.
I thank the Right Honourable Member for bringing forward such an important debate, and like others have said, this is absolutely crucial. I added my name to those calls in November of last year that there would be an inquiry for the families, for the victims, and also for the city. This has been a cloud that has covered Birmingham for 51 years now. And I wonder if the Right Honourable Member reflects on what signal, what message does it send that we're still waiting? And therefore, what is it that they can believe in if they can't get the truth that they've so waited for?
Absolutely right. This is about the past. It is about truth. It is about justice. But she is right to say it is also about the future. This is about whether we in this House believe in justice without exception, justice without delay, justice that does not stop at the doors of power. And it is whether the government of this country will look the people of Birmingham in the eye and say, we hear you, we see you, we believe you, and we will not rest until you get the answers that you deserve. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let us honour the memory of those 21 souls who never came home. Who never came home that night. Let's stand with their families. Let us speak for a city that is still scarred by this silence. And let us at long last do what we should have done decades ago. Let's hold a public inquiry into the Birmingham pub bombings.
I call the Minister, Minister Dan Jarvis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I start by commending my right honourable friend for securing this debate. He's a very long-standing member of this House, and I know that this is an issue of huge importance for him and his constituency, as well as to other members representing Birmingham right across this House. I think he's made his case passionately and powerfully, and the Home Secretary and I have heard what he's had to say, as well as the contributions from other members, and we are grateful for them. Now, I will respond to the points that have been made, but first I want to say something about the bombings themselves, because we must never lose sight of the fact that the bombs planted in the mulberry bush and the Tavern on the Town public houses in Birmingham on the 21st of November 1974 claimed 21 lives, injured over 200 others, and caused untold devastation and pain. The harm caused by these brutal attacks went far beyond those killed and injured. It continues to affect parents, children, siblings and friends to this day. Over half a century has now passed since the bombings, but the impact of these atrocities remain vivid and raw, not just in Birmingham, but in our national psyche. Now, above all, Madam Deputy Speaker, we think of the victims and their families, and I do want to recognise the work of the Justice for the 21 campaign, who continue to powerfully advocate for all those affected and to seek justice for their loved ones. And I acknowledge their long-standing request for the establishment of a public inquiry into the bombings. The Home Secretary is considering advice and is determined to provide an answer to the families and victims as soon as possible. And I'm sure that members will understand that we will ensure that the families are the first to hear the outcome. Now, my right honourable friend mentioned in his speech that the Birmingham pub bombings are not covered by the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Act. He's right that a public inquiry into the Birmingham pub bombings is not prevented by the Act. The Act does not prevent any public inquiry from taking place. But I want to emphasise that the Birmingham pub bombings are absolutely in scope of the Legacy Act and would be eligible for an investigation led by the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery, which the Act created. I have full confidence that the Commission and its team of dedicated staff hold the sufficient powers, resources and expertise to support the families in the process of seeking answers to their questions. Indeed, the Commission is already investigating the Guildford pub bombings. I will.
I'm very glad that the Minister has concentrated on the truth and justice aspect of the Legacy Act. Can he reassure the House that the government, in its proposals to repeal the Legacy Act, is not going to lose that opportunity of having the trade-off, as it were, between immunity from prosecution but truth recovery, which is what the basis of the Legacy Act always was?
Minister. Minister.
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman, who is himself a very experienced member of this House, will know that I'm stood next to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and I hope that he will understand that the work of the previous government, which no doubt was well-intentioned, did not provide a solution that had the support of political parties in Northern Ireland, nor did it have the support of both veterans and those who've suffered the impact of terrorism. I can give him an absolute assurance that the Secretary of State, working with colleagues right across government, will do everything that we possibly can to ensure that we put in place a solution and a settlement that is able to attract that wider support. I'll give way one more time. Then
It's very kind of him to give way one more time. Can I urge ministers not to be blinded by what political parties say in Northern Ireland? Because the truth of the matter is that they have to take certain positions, usually ones which favour their side and disfavour the other one. And the prospect of getting all those parties to agree on something like this is minute. And that's why the Legacy Act cut through all that in the same way that Nelson Mandela came up with a similar solution that worked in South Africa.
Minister.
I'm grateful to him. I hope that he would accept that none of the political parties in Northern Ireland were able to support the previous arrangements. And I know that he understands the complexity of these matters, and I hope that he will see that this government is acting in good faith and is attempting to put in place an arrangement that can attract the widespread support that I think is required. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was making the point that the options for the families to refer their case to the Commission is available now, and I encourage any victim, survivor or family member affected by the Troubles to give consideration to the Commission in their search for answers. Now, a number of investigations have been conducted over the 50 years since the bombings, including West Midlands police investigations between 2012 and 2014, and 2019 and 2023, as well as coronial inquests that concluded in 2019. Like so many incidents that occurred during the Troubles, the prospect of criminal justice outcomes is now increasingly unlikely. But the families of the bereaved in Birmingham, like so many others, completely understandably continue to seek the information and accountability that they deserve. Now, my right honourable friend raised the desire by the families for the role of the police and the criminal justice system to be investigated as part of any public inquiry. As honourable members will be aware, the Independent Office of Police Conduct is a respected and well-tested forum for such matters. And as a Northern Ireland veteran myself, I know that the Troubles were a devastating time for the whole nation, such that 25 years on from the passing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, the impact lives on. Each tragedy has far-reaching and long-standing effects on victims, survivors, and the communities around them. The work undertaken by all of those who sought to end the Troubles has helped prevent further such tragedies, and it is important that we seek to remain united across this House in our condemnation of anyone who seeks to take us back to those times. The pub bombings in Birmingham killed or injured innocent people who happened to be in a particular place when heinous acts were perpetrated. Today and always, we mourn the dead and hold their loved ones in our thoughts, and we think too of the survivors and all those who were affected. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to finish by thanking my right honourable friend for securing the debate and all the other members who contributed to it. Terrorist attacks have terrible and far-reaching consequences on individuals, communities and our society as a whole. We must stand united to combat terrorism, whether that is driven by political, religious or ideological causes. This government and the people of this country are united in our condemnation of those who inflict violence on our streets. The Birmingham Pub Bombings were a brutal moment in our history, in the history of that great city and of our country. A day when 21 lives were cruelly snatched away and hundreds more changed forever. We understand that the devastation caused by these horrific attacks continues for people to this day, and more than 50 years later, the fact that their quest for answers and justice goes on must be unbelievably distressing. As I have said, we recognise the frustration this causes, yet these are decisions that need to be taken incredibly carefully, and the government will respond to the request for a public inquiry as soon as possible. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have the utmost sympathy for the bereaved families and for the survivors. Their experience for over 50 years has been deeply painful, and I am sure honourable and right honourable members right across this House continue to hold them in their thoughts and their prayers.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye? Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.